And I'm going to read you a poem called Strung Out and Hanging Shore. For a while, I supported myself by working as a diker. It's not as sexy as it sounds. Essentially, it's just constructing dry stone walls. You know, it's pretty heavy work, and you just stand there all day on top of the hills. But the land where you build these places is, it's incredible. They were originally put up at the time of the enclosures, so it's kind of pretty, bit of a turncoatish activity to be up there doing it. But you know, that was the only job on offer, really. And but it was incredible to be up in that environment, you know, and experience that kind of weather, and physically to be engaged with the landscape. Mostly, and I also romantically thought that I'd take a notebook. Obviously, I took a notebook up with me and just working alone on top of these hills with the, you know, the weather from the Atlantic just coming in and the rain like it's horizontal, and it's pretty grim. And I thought I would spend that for an opportunity to write some great poems about being there. But all I could think about was, you know, fuck me, why isn't this fucking stone break, you know? Because you have to break them into size to fit on the wall, you know. Fucking break it. And then shivering, you know, and you can't stop working because you're hot when you work, but when you stop, the wind just finds its way, however well wrapped up you are, you know. It will soak you. Anyway, this is that landscape, strung out and hanging shore. Cotton grass on a slope below, a shivering fell blew through blown clouds coming over slow. September hills stroked by running sunlight. The sky crowded, stashed with rain. Dikes to rip, stones to fit. My hammer breaks open a sandstone rock. It smells of sea. Does it taste of salt? A cushion flushed from a culvert settles on a hush gutter. Scudded by black Atlantic clouds, I lie low as a hare on the lawn. The skyline chipped with precarious dikes. When I heft a found and lay it again, striking the line straight, a border collie arrives, followed by its shepherd, who says, "Just clash it up, man." Gash heat from sun slant, lug ache from wind jag, back knacked, howking founds, heaving through as the dike gans up. A closing hailstone, slanting fast, a stacked up sky, a hawthorn, a history of wind written in it. Otherwise, it's a fiery day, and the hills are burning up, and the sun is going down and out, and blown about light, lit all up again. Wind rushes, wet and frozen, I'm through with throughs. So, as I pass, the bruised cloud lit the ditch, clips the drain, rush the gutter, flood the river, Gannon Yen. And I also had the great fortune to live right on top of those fells where there are no houses, you know. It's totally exposed, and but there's a cafe, and it's a bikers cafe, and it's been there for a long time. It's famous as a bikers cafe. And that's it, on top of these fells, and I lived there. They had some accommodation. It was really cheap and available, so I took it and lived there for almost 10 years, and it was the longest I've ever lived in any one place. And anyway, this is one of the poems that sort of came out of that place. Again, following on from that. Lark and Merlin, and the Merlin is not the guy with a pointy hat. It's the I'm sure you know as the small falcon from that name. And I suppose I used to, you know, in the wildlife up there, even in winter they even take the sheep off. I mean, that's all you have up on the top of those hills. It's looking at nose. but in winter they even take a sheep off the hills down into the valleys because the winds are so ferocious, and they close the cafe too because it gets snowed up and it's impossible to access, and there's no business. So but for me it was just an extraordinary experience, to be that intimate with the wilderness. Okay, so this is Lark and Merlin. A wren perched on a hawthorn, low enough to skip the scalping wind, sang a scalpel song. Sea frets drift sheer along shorelines, listening to hail spray glass and wind and a waitress laugh in a cafe without customers. I fell thinking. A sullen light through vapour thins a line of hills. The edge of everything is nothing, whipped by wind. Watched on a webcam, bound to a bedpost gag on my shaft. Rose blush of roadkill rabbit insides out on Tom McAdam. Cumulus in a tarn, its fast shadow flees far hills. A wave of sleek grass skiffs mist. My hand thought of her, a photograph waiting to happen. This come to kill wind rips at the root. Here she comes and there she goes, rushes bound to rhyme. I should shut down, close off, stop if I could. How quick the mist, how quick. My lover, the assassin, is beautiful. She has come to kill me, and I concur. Just now she sleeps, but when she wakes, I'm dead. Her eyelids flitter as I prepare her potions, her delicious poisons. As she flew past, a lick of her melodic nectar stuck to my wing, making flight for an instant sticky, but nothing preening couldn't fix. She asked about my heart, its evasive flight, but can I trust her with its secrets? And does the merlin, in fast pursuit of its prey, tell the fleeing lark it is enamoured of its song? Or the singing lark turn tail and fly into the falcon's talons? My heart, the cartographer, charts to the waterline, is swept back as the tide turns, wiping the map blank wave after moon-drawn wave. But it beats my heart of its own volition. A lark sings, winds rush reeds. Walking home I stride these tracks with her tread, the blurred thumbprint of a smudged moon. It has gone on for days, strumming rushes, taking up tails, taking them on. The fall of my foot on tufts. A stroke of light along a law laying in under a long cloud. I accrete, likened to limestone, sphagnum to peat. Late shadows gather in the dark. Words unwrite as they are written, unspeak as they are spoken. Songs sprung from heart and lung to tongue unsung. Drunk winds stumble over shuffling roofs, shake his sleep who dreams a lost love will not let go. Recurring swirls of old gold, blown light. You can't help but be in it as it opens and falls back on itself, unfolds and unsays, I do not want to die without writing the unwritten pleasure of water. So, as I was saying, the kind of concept of balladry for me is, in some, especially after today's this interesting discussion, is kind of specific and limited. This guy, Jamie Allan, I discovered I used to work when I left school at 14 or 15, and I used to hang around these sale rooms, the auction rooms, and buy up cheap stuff and sell it on, you know. And one day I picked up this book, battered old book, published in 1810, which was a life story of a biography of this Jamie Allan, who was this famous Northumbrian piper, and also a famous horse thief, and a serial deserter from the army. Joined the army, got the recruiting money, and fucked off. And he did it a lot of times, and it was a capital offence. But because he was such a brilliant musician, he was kind of rescued really by gentry. And at one time he was the Duke's of Northumberland's official piper, or really the Countess of Northumberland's official piper, really. I don't know if he snaked her or not. He may have been. Anyway, he was an intriguing character, and so from when I was 17 or 16, when I discovered this life story, which seemed so extraordinary, and he's very well known in folk circles, and he was known in the border country because he was such a rogue, and we all love rogue literature, you know, and rogue stories, and he used to produce these little chapbooks for farmers and so on. So the principally based on that original biography, which apparently was as told to the writer of the biography by Allan, recounting his life. Everyone assumed it was total fantasy. I went to the National Archives. I had an opportunity to do some research on it, and much, like I don't know, 40 years after I found the book, and in the National Archive I discovered there's this trial for being a horse thief at the age of 70. There are dozens of other trials where witness statements handwritten in this kind of 18th century copper plate, where he'd been stealing horses with his brother. And I'm joining the army in the Book of Deserters, you know, and there's accounts of him. And so this book comes out of, I was given the opportunity to do the research, because I couldn't take it. I mean, you know, I work as a poet, so I don't work in institutions or universities, and I don't have research facilities available to me. So, but I had the good fortune to work with a composer called John Hall, and we persuaded this venue in the north of England to commission us to write a folk opera based on Jamie Allan. And that gave me the opportunity to do some research. I went to the National Archive and covered all this material and found that all of this fantastic life was actually true. You know, it was there. It wasn't black and white on this occasion only. But and then because the material that I was able to research was totally useless to the opera. I mean, I couldn't use it, you know. The composer said to me, look, all I need is 12 ballads and some kind of links, you know. So that was easy. But all the research material I did, which was what fascinated me, I was able to put into the book, you know. And also sort of bearing in mind the discussion today, when, you know, balladry is, thanks to, is, you know, obviously it's not just something you sing, but there are all these broadsides and all that kind of stuff. And in a way, the book sort of, you know, utilizes all of that kind of material. I found wanted adverts for it, you know. So all of that's kind of built into it. I'm not going to read all of it, but I'll just give you an illustration now. There's in the depositions. The information's about his thievery. I was just intrigued by the language that in the legal documents, for instance, you know, Durham to wit, the informant upon his oath saith that between the hours of 10 in the evening of Thursday, the 24th of March last, and 7 the following morning, the stable of the informant was feloniously broken and entered into, and a bear gelding, the property of the informant, feloniously stolen and taken and carried away. And this informant further saith, on the same night he saw two persons with a child proceeding thereupon, one of whom he then knew to be James Allan, and so etc. etc. And I thought actually I'd quite like to turn that sort of legalese into something that I could use and just spin it around, you know. So the song the ballad that I built out of that uses that kind of language. You know. So, and I won't read all of it because it's kind of fairly long, but I'll give you a sense of it. Hey up and away. The informant further saith on the 24th of March, returning to his dwelling house when it was getting dark, he saw two persons and a child proceeding thereupon. The informant then demanded that the travellers be gone. Hey up, hey up, hey up and away. I told him we were lost and wanting Gateshead fell. Do you want the high or low? Matthew Robinson did yell. Both are haunts of rogues and villains like yourself. Young Annie turned to him and sent him to hell. So anyway, so I built that kind of tried to build that legalese language into the song. It also has, I'll just read you one of it. It also, as well as kind of lyrics for the singers, obviously. Also, one of my models was Charles Reznikov and his beautiful book Testimony, which I'm sure you're familiar with. Is it as testimony or testimony?
Simply testimony. Yeah.
Anyway, I loved that. And it was such a, such a wonderful sort of, already made to measure vehicle. So it's got stuff like this. James Bell, and which is taken again directly from these legal documents. March 7th of March 1776, John Bell, his information. On Monday night, John Bell's stables were screwed and his black mare went missing. On Tuesday morning early, Richard Thompson found a chestnut Galloway gelding, a black mare, a saddle and a bridle missing from his stables. Thomas Trumbull, looking for his Shetland ponies and Galloways, met John Bell, who said, "It's market day at Edinburgh, they'll be sold there," and rode north together. They gave out exact descriptions of their animals, and by 8 o'clock at night heard of a sighting on the Glasgow road at sunrise. But they lost track, gave up the chase, and turned south, where they met the black mare with Jamie Allan on its back, and his brother Robert riding the other. So that was, and I'm going to actually read because of Richard's generous words about it. I'm going to read you the charm which sets the book up. You who make music and music makes, whose fingers fly, make of air a song, your breath be steady and the truth be long. Oh shit, there's a slip. It's actually, your breath be steady and the tune be long. Truth, tune. What did you put in that one? No. And also, and I read you those, and also because I knew one of the things about Alan was he really loved that part of the country. I mean, he just loved where he came from. He loved the hills and so on. And I was living up in that place, I was learning very much to love, and learning how to love that kind of landscape, I always aspired to it and wanted to be in it, but I never quite knew why or how it would be. So when I realised that I could the poems that I'd written about that landscape, or was writing about that landscape, could serve as like his inner voice, if you like. So I can give you a documentary approach, like those testimonies, and also the songs which spin the story along. But also there's this kind of, inner life, and that worked really well for me. It was just accidental. I thought, fuck me, that'll work. I mean, because I'm totally, opportunistic, and really, as I was told by Bunting, I mean, when he first looked at my manuscripts when I was a kid, and he just chopped this out and chopped that out, but he said, save that line, you might be able to use it somewhere else later on. and that's always ever since which time, you know, if you've written a crappy poem, but there's about 3 or 4 great lines in it, you think, well, you know, where might they go at a later date? So that's pretty much what happened. Okay, so let me see. I'll read here again that again using these documents. And actually, I've twice been to Bon Terre in Missouri, this high security jail, and you know, which my friend Devin Johnson and his colleague at St. Louis University, they've set up a program there, you know, and they take people in, writers, musicians, lecturers, you know, to talk on a range of subjects to these people. But I realized that they have very little access. They only allow, for instance, 7 or 4 or 5, I think, a very small number of books or printed items in their cell at any one time. So if they wanted to follow any, you know, discourse, and wanted to follow any line of argument or anything like that, research, they're pretty limited. But one thing they have unlimited access to is the kind of legal documents around and associated with their case. You know, so I read them this stuff, you know, and because I knew they could get anything remotely associated with a case and all this kind of legal bollocks that, you know, was tied up with it, so they can research it and so on. And you know, I told them what I'd done with this stuff and tried to turn it into, you know, creative language rather than that kind of legalese fixed jargon. So here's another example of that. In the Book of Deserters, I found this, War Office, 22nd November 1757, and there was quite a few of these. Sir, I am directed by the Secretary of War to return you his thanks for your care of His Majesty's service in committing to York Jail James Allan, a deserter from MS Cornwallis's Regiment of Foot. Wasn't he involved in the war against the Yankees? The British. He was a general in the British in the War of Independence. I think he was one of the shitbags that we sent over here to keep you locked down. So James Allan, deserter of MS Cornwallis's Regiment of Foot, and to acquaint you that an order goes out by this post to fetch the man away. So this phrase kept occurring in all of these letters, you know, fetch the man away. And so I wrote this little chant thing called Fetch the Man Away. And because it continually uses, you know, fetch the man away, they say fetch the man away. So it repeats and repeats all the time. And I was looking for another word that was like fetch. But, you know, and I suddenly thought, fuck, you know, fleck sounds good. And it suddenly came to mind, I have absolutely no idea where it came from. But I thought, God, that sounds great. So I used it, but then I looked it up in the Scottish dictionary, and fleck, this remote part of Scotland, the fleck is a word, and it precisely means to chastise, to lash, you know. So you know, there's a little interesting example of the unconscious, maybe it's in the DNA, I don't know, but this word popped up, and so that's what fleck means in this instance. Fetch the man away. Fetch the man away, they say, fetch the man away. Fetch the man away, they say, fetch the man away. Fleck him back to camp and bind him to a wheel. Paint the cobbles black when you whip him till he peels. Fetch the man away, they say, fetch the man away. Fleck the man all day, they say, fetch the man away. Flame till he stays, they say, fleck the man all day. Flame till he stays, they say, fetch the man away. Fetch him to his regiment, tie him to a wheel, bend him, break him, rip his skin, whip him till he squeals. Flay him till he stays, fella, fetch the man away. Flay him till he stays, fella, flick the man away. Flick the man away. Actually, then later on I thought I should have something like, flay him in his stays. I couldn't fit that in. So, how are we doing with time? Another couple of minutes and I'll finish. There's so I'll read you some of this kind of inner life related to the landscape, because that's whenever he was escaping, he just went back home, and he was much loved and or tolerated, but appreciated certainly for his musical skills. So when they sent these Hanoverian soldiers after him, all the local people would protect him one way and another, so they could never catch him. So to finish with two. Clouds drag shadows across contours, storm hail between hassock, while west winds chase light, chasing vapour from the coast. A raven blows in with a croak and settles on a cane, hears grass respond to gusts. Pale golden reeds are black, reflected in a pool whose surface stipples wind as her dress fell, light as a shadow on her body. And if she were next to me now, all night under the low beams and shifting tiles, beneath the wind held for a moment, as it passes and is forgotten, a dream on waking, or a blown note honed to silence. So I'm going to finish with a ballad called Hawthorne. There is a Hawthorne. I'm sorry, I'm going to have a drink first. Actually, I'm going to do one very short little poem before that, just to break the news line. It's because there was mention of the sonnet earlier today, and I have this poem, which I'll try and remember because I don't think I can find it. Oh, here it is. It's To Goad My Frigging Peers, which is a play on George Orwell's The Road to Wigan Pier. To goad my frigging peers. Fuck the sonnet, I piss upon it, and those who seek to launch a sinking reputation on it, as though it were some talismanic denture, an entree to a toothless craft. Take those billiards out your pocket. To reach the moon, you need a rocket. Right. And so I will finish with this little poem. Well, that's what William Corliss Williams said, didn't he? In his autobiography. We're the ones against the sonnet. Yeah, because there is a sort of love story that runs through the, as it should, through a proper opera. Runs through the book too. There is a hawthorn on a hill. There is a hawthorn growing. It's set its roots against the wind, the worrying wind that's blowing. Its berries are red, its blossoms so white, I thought that it was snowing. There is a hawthorn by a wall that looks down to the valley. Its berries are red, its thorns are sharp. It's where we said we'd marry. Its berries are red, its blossom is white, and the hail makes sharp weather. Without her now, I'll make my bed in the bleeding heather. Come with me, oh come with me, my darling. The berries are red, the thorns are sharp, and the corbies are crying. Don't send me out, don't cut me down, don't exile me, my darling. The thorns turn red, kill the blossom dead, and the tethered wind is snarling. There is a hawthorn by a wall that looks down to the valley. Its berries are red, its thorns are sharp. It's where we said we'd marry. Its berries are red, its blossom is white, and the hail makes sharp weather. Without her now, I'll make my bed in the bleeding heather. Thanks very much.